Good evening. Good evening. We are back. We are back on the show called Debt Counseling Made Easy. This is TBR Solution, Debt Counseling Made Easy. We have our expert, Elias Shamatla, who's explaining debt counseling in a very simple manner for any person, especially men in the street, to understand exactly what is happening. Because normally you see people say, no, that counseling, I don't like it. And the problem is the person has a problem and then he's being told, go to that review. And then the next thing he asks his friend who doesn't know anything about that counseling. And then all of a sudden the friend becomes an expert on the subject that he does not understand. And as a result, people end up procrastinating. And this session that we do all the time, every Monday at 7 p.m. with Mr. Elias Shamatla, explain, take the myth out of the meat. We are giving you the facts, not the myth or, opinions. That's not what we are doing. We are giving you facts. Mr. Shamatla, welcome to the show, and thank you very much for agreeing to do this. I know that you are a very busy man.
Good evening, Tate. Good evening to the viewers. Once again, it's always an honor to be with you. I'm with you here to share our experiences and knowledge on this topic.
That review, it's almost 15 years now, if I'm not mistaken. It started in 2007.
Yes.
Unfortunately enough, November this year will be 14 years in the industry. So now people will understand that the people who are talking on this subject, they know the subject. Mr. Shamatla is always talking to creditors. Mr. Shamatla is always interacting with NCR, attending meetings, be part of the meetings. So he knows exactly what he's talking about. Mr. Shamatla, today we are looking at the most important aspect, the days, all right? Remember, legal aspect, it goes with its technicality. Now, when the matter goes to court, because it's a legal process, the first thing that the legal people are looking at are the technicality. You'll hear people say, this person has lost the case, only to find he lost on technicality, but the merit were not discussed. So the starting point all the time is on technicality. And always technicality start with the days. Firstly, the format of your affidavits, because the court has a prescribed format that should be followed. That's where it starts. Thereafter, the days. So now this is very, very important, especially for people who are just gone under that review. They want to know what's happening. Now, Mr. Shamatla, a person has just signed a Form 16 today. What is happening?
Very important. The debt counselor has to issue Form 17.1 within 5 days of that Form 16. As you have said, the person or the consumer has just signed the Form 16 today. So that counselor has 5 days to issue for Form 17.1. Why is it important to mention these 5 days? Let's say the credit provider institutes a legal action after 2 days from now, because that counselor has not issued 17.1. That counselor can prove to the credit provider that, no, the consumer had already signed Form 16 with me. Remember, I have got 5 days to issue Form 17.1. So technically, the consumer was already under that review. Even though you didn't receive my 17.1 in 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, the consumer was already legally protected. So that is very important. So if they want to repossess the car, the DC can say, even though you have not received my Form 17.1, but the consumer has signed Form 16 with me. So I'm busy processing the Form 17.1.
Right.
So if they,
while they're still there, what is the importance of Form 16? What is Form 16? I know we're dealing with the dates, but I want you to explain what is Form 16? What is its importance?
That's the beginning of the statutory process of debt review application. Form 16 now says, after you have signed it, it says, now as a consumer, you are legally under debt review. You have applied for debt review, so you are under statutory protection. NCA, which is the National Credit Act, now protects you against credit provider.
Now, as a client, as a consumer, I've just gone under debt review with Mr. Shamatla. Am I entitled to get that Form 16 as a legal document that I can file in my file, even if when they ask me and then I can produce it even without even contacting my debt counsel? Am I allowed to have a copy?
Yes, in our practice, that's what we do. It's for every debt counselor, I think it's proper to give the consumer, which is your client, every copy of the document that the consumer has signed or the one that you have issued. Have your file, let the consumer have his file as well. Why? If somebody approaches the consumer and says, I'm not aware that you're under debt review, hence I'm here to agree to come and repossess your car. The consumer can say, here is my application. I can give it to you now. Right?
So
and again, yes. Again, when the consumer decides to take transfer from your office to another debt counselor for various reasons, then the consumer has got all the documentation that he requires. Then you won't receive any request for give us the Form 16, Form 17.1, 17.2, this and that and that. Consumer has got all those documents. All that you can issue is the transfer letter.
Mr. Shamatla, I know that a lot of people are a little bit wary about having a lot of papers. You're talking about 17.1, Form 16, 72, and they say, no. Remember, you have people who are over-indebted, stressed by many things, and then they don't want any responsibility. What is the advantage of having a debt counselor and a PDA in terms of this administrative logistic or administrative nightmare? What can you say about it?
You know, you have put it so rightfully when you say the PDA and the debt counselor perform administrative duties. The consumer is still responsible for his financial affairs. The PDA and the debt counselor ensure that the process runs smoothly in terms of the law. So you as the consumer have to know what is happening in your financial affairs. You know, it's surprising that we always discuss this with the producers of the various radio stations when the consumers call in and say, I don't know who my debt counselor is. You know, a person will say, I've got a problem with my debt counselor, and then you ask, who's your debt counselor? They don't even know. They'll say, it's some company or someone in Cape Town. Yet you are paying this person every month. This person is taking care of your house, your car, your life. And you don't even know who this person is.
While they're still there, remember, a lot of clients, they get calls, Cape Town, especially Cape Town and Durban, all right? And now they can sign on their phones, you know? Everything is paperless, all right? And then hence, at the end of the day, they end up losing track to the whole thing. So what are you saying? Remember the big R, the principle, one of the principles of the big R is responsibility. Everybody take responsibility. The debt counselor is responsible. We assume that you as a consumer, you are responsible. The PDA is responsible. Creditors are responsible. So that's part of your responsibility. Am I right as a consumer to say, can I get my file too, so that I keep it and save it somewhere? People keep papers for wrong things, papers for their newspapers that they read, and they don't worry about rats there. The most important documentation papers that deals with their money, that's the one that they don't want. It's a little bit tricky about that. So I don't know if you can elaborate on that one.
Yes, what happens is that nowadays we have got emails. Those who have got emails, what happens is that they send you a Form 16 which is signed, right? Your office captures this on the system, that counseling system. Let's call it that counseling system. And then it generates the computerized Form 16, right? So ideally, you can email this to the consumer or to the client, because remember, there will be some changes. Because the client said, my groceries is 3,000 rand, my this and that, my expenses are that much. Then you realize that no, our budget doesn't add up. Do you want to review your expenses? Then the consumer says, actually, I don't need 3,000 rand, I need 2.5 to be realistic. Then on the new Form 16 that you are capturing, because this is real now, then you can do those amendments, and then you email this to the consumer. Then he can keep it in his folder. He can open a folder on his phone or laptop to say, this is my debt review file. Now he has got his Form 16. When you send Form 17.1 to credit providers, after sending it, you forward this to the consumer. He has got Form 17.1. When you receive COBs, certificate of balance, from the credit providers, you forward this to the consumer. He has got all of them. Then you generate a proposal, a structuring proposal. You send it to credit providers, then you send it to the consumer so that he can see. Okay. Then you've got full acceptance. Let's assume you get full acceptance from the credit providers. Now you alert the consumer to say, we have got full acceptance. Remember, we said to you, this now must be made an order of court. We are going to the National Consumer Tribunal for a consent order, or we are going to your local magistrate's court. We are going to instruct an attorney to go and represent you. You don't have to be in court as a consumer. Or BR, for example, as a debt counselor, will go to the National Consumer Tribunal to do the court process. You don't have to be there. We just let you know. Right. Then you file your application for consent order or a court order. Then you get you are given a date. You'll alert the consumer to say, okay, the date has been set down for 10th of August. And 10th of October, for example. And then afterwards, you get your consent order or court order. When you send this to the credit providers to restructure all the accounts under debt review, you send this to the consumer as well. And then you say to the consumer, my job is done. I've got a court order. I've got a consent order. As a debt counselor, there is nothing further that I can do from here. Now it's between you and the PDA. Because your duty as a consumer, you have got a duty as well as a consumer. Your duty now is to make sure that you pay the money that I quoted to you to the PDA. If you pay 10,000 rand to a PDA, make sure that you have got a stop order or you've got a debit order of 10,000 rand a month on time. Because if you make it 9.5, the PDA has been told to expect 10,000 rand. He doesn't know what to do with this 10,000. I'm 9.5 now. That's where the issue of defaults come in. So once you have paid your 10,000 rand to the PDA every month, the PDA gives you the statement on a monthly basis. After distributing the money, then he sends you the email to say, we sent X amount to your vehicle account, Y amount to your home loan, and so forth. Then you know that your money is finished. Month end, the new money comes in, which is 10,000 rand. They distribute, your account is cleared. So now, you as the consumer, when you realize that, hey, I'm working overtime, I'm getting extra bucks here and there because I've got some side hustle. You come back to a debt counselor and say, debt counselor, I've got extra bucks with me. Where can I slot in? That counselor can say, okay, looks like your Edgar's account is left with 2,000 rand. Let me get the settlement amount then we can settle ADCAS, and then they give us the paid up letter. This one's out of the way.
So in other words, there is a continuous communication between you and that counselor. That's very, very important.
Very important. So when that counselor has received the court order or consent order to restructure your accounts, that counselor's job is done. So from now on, it's your responsibility to make sure that you pay. So the reason why that counselor receives what is called aftercare fee is because now you're going to come up with some issues to say, I've got extra bucks that I want to utilize towards my debts. That counselor has to now request the settlement balances, just to attend to the queries. So he can't come back and charge you a new professional fee again. Why? Because you have put him on retainer. You are paying him aftercare fee to say, should I fall pregnant and wants to make some changes, that counselor can be able to issue Form 73.3, which is a change in some financial circumstances. To say, hey, credit providers, you know that we have agreed on X amount every month. Something has come up. My client has just conceived and delivered a baby. There's a new baby now. So there's extra cost to the family. So can we please amend our proposal? If there's a court order, I would like to vary that court order to reduce the amount from 800 rand to 500 rand now. So now, remember, like a medical doctor, when you go to a medical doctor today, because you've got flu, you prescribe the medication, you go to the pharmacy, get the medication, go home, you don't get better. You come back to the medical doctor again. He charges you another professional fee. But that in that review, that has been catered for because we paid that counselor after care fee, monthly after care fee. So he doesn't charge you another professional fee because you don't have it. So you know that I've got a fixed amount that I pay towards that counseling. If there's any problem, that problem is going to be caused by me as the consumer, not by that counselor.
Most importantly, okay? Yes.
Because I always hear people saying, yeah, I've been paying my accounts, but my debt counselor is not paying. What we can affirm to the consumers is that that counselor doesn't even see your money, because the money leaves your account straight to the PDA, from the PDA to the credit providers. It's not that the counselor's fault that your account or your accounts have not been paid. Because that counselor has made a proposal, has given this to the PDA. So the PDA, when you receive 10,000 rand, this is how you distribute it. So if you're going to make a shortage, then the PDA has got a challenge, not that the counselor. Hence, it's very important that whenever you foresee that you're going to have a problem, let your debt counselor, you say, Mr. Debt Counselor, I went to visit my mother or my family the past weekend. I had a tire puncture. Unfortunately, I have to replace the tire at the cost of 850 rand. So I'm going to have a shortage in my budget. Then the debt counselor can make prior arrangement, can say, okay, instead of inconveniencing all the credit providers, let me target one credit provider and say, credit provider, we will skip the payment this month because of this issue. Can you please add 1 month at the end of the payment
process?
Yes, because we agreed on 60 months. Can we make 61 months, please, to accommodate this? And most of the credit providers don't have an issue with that. You know, that is very important. And that day, Chabalala, before you forget, one other thing that the consumers must be aware of, while you are under debt review and you receive Section 8610 notice, which is the termination of the debt review process, it's when there's a default, you as a consumer has not paid. If you have not paid what the debt counselor proposed you to pay, then the credit providers will terminate the debt review application hand over your accounts to legal department. Where I'm trying to get at is this. When that review started, we had a form called Form 17.4. That was the voluntary withdrawal of that review. And that was scrapped by the court. I just want to give a background where does that come from. There's a client that went to the debt counselor and applied for debt review successfully. And then when the client was supposed to pay the first installment, which is the debt counselor's professional fee, the client didn't pay that. Second month, the client was supposed to pay the legal fees. The client didn't pay that money. So the then debt counselor withdrew as a debt counselor of record. He issued 17.4, which was the then voluntary withdrawal, that I am withdrawing as a debt counselor of record. Why? Because the consumer or the client is not cooperating. He thinks this is debt counseling instead of debt counseling. He thinks he can hide here and not pay credit providers and not pay anyone. So me as a debt counselor, I'm withdrawing, then you can proceed with the enforcement action. So that was within 2 months of that review.
Okay.
So now the consumer had a home loan with the bank. That particular bank immediately issued summons, against the consumer on the home loan because the home loan was in arrears. The matter went to court, and the court declined or refused to grant a judgment. He said 60 business days have not lapsed. 60 business days, we are talking about 20 days per month because you don't include weekends and public holidays. So we have got Monday to Friday. So Monday to Fridays in a month, we have got 4 weeks, which is 20 days. Right. So now the court said, this is to show you that high courts respect that review. They said, unfortunately, we cannot issue we cannot grant the court order or the judgment because that review is still in process, even though that counselor has pulled out. 60 business days have not lapsed, which is 3 months. And that particular bank had to wait for 60 business days to lapse and then start afresh.
So these days things are very important. Very, very important.
And that particular bank, very important. Yes. So now that particular bank went to the credit industry, approached or raised this view to all the credit providers and debt counselors, and said, debt counselors, unfortunately, this 17.4 of yours is not recognized by the courts. Because a debt counselor rightfully gave us the voluntary withdrawal, which is 17.4. And the court says you have to respect the dates. You understand? So hence the rebirth of 17.W.
And the suspension. You know what? I want you to hold it there. We will start there. Remember, we are still talking about days. We have just spoken about 5 days of the debt counselor to write 17.1. All right?
Yes.
So next week we'll be continuing with days and explaining in detail. And then again, I want you to stress the fact that clients should take note that at the end of the day, even that aftercare is paid by the creditors.
Yes.
Not them. All right? Because the creditors have given them what you call reduction on their interest rate. And then that reduction relieves them. And when it relieves them, That is the money that was supposed to go to the creditors. Instead, it now pays these processes. And debt counselors, as you say, other debt counselors, they have a huge office, they have staff that have to pay and all that. That 4,500 or whatever, I mean 450 or 5%, because it could be 250, depending.
Yes.
The 5% of the rehab was how much. So it's used for that particular purpose. Very good explanation, and I think it will help so many people and the debt counselors. I want, when we come back, we start from the 5 days, one. And then when you come back, explain, because now 17.4, as you said, it does not exist. You gave the history, why it does not exist. Now, we know there is a suspension. So what is a suspension now? What is 17W now? All those things. Then, as we explain these days. So I want you to take note of that we explain from there when we meet again next week, Monday. Is that correct? I think there was another thing that I wanted you to explain in your input, which is very, very important to be clarified for people to understand at the process. Oh, okay, but this one I'm saying it in passing. You are saying clients at the end of the day, they should now start embracing technology. Yes. Why they give emails? They can use cloud. They can use cloud and save their documents in cloud if they don't want papers. But unfortunately, if it goes to court, the courts want physical documentation. So it's up to you, when you know that no, there will be a court date, then you can start printing and compile your file as a client for that matter. All right. And then if you want to defend your case without appointing a lawyer going forward. But because you have a debt counsel that you have appointed, we'll assist you. Mr. Shamatla, it was a very good explanation. And I think it will help so many, not only the consumers, it will also help the new debt counselors, even the old debt counselors, to continue to refresh their mind about the process, because court process, it's very intense. And then, so that is why we are calling it debt counseling made it easy. I don't know whether you want to have the last input or the last bite before we close. If that is not the case, then you can beat them for a while.
There might be somebody that Chabalala, who has just received a call today to say, we are coming to your house tomorrow to repossess our vehicle. Mm. Yeah. Let's help that viewer that's viewing now, who is watching now, to say, you can call Big R and say, I've received a call and I've watched this program that I'm going to lose my vehicle. I need assistance in terms of debt review. Mm. By just signing Form 16, you are already protected. Mm. Because that counselor can notify the bank, hey, hang on, the client has just signed Form 16. I'm busy preparing the Form 17.1, stay put. And remember, the consumer in this case is not even paying a cent upfront. Mm. 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 There's no upfront fee. Mm. Mm. You will pay by month end once the debt counselor has done the budget to say, all right, according to your budget, your total installment for all your debts is going to be 7,000 rand. So my first 7,000 will be my fee. Mm. Mm. Whereas if you take legal route to defend this matter and they are suing you in the High Court, you need about 30,000 rand.
Minimum.
To defend.
Minimum.
Yes. To defend only the car. Mm. So now, I'm saying this because great providers don't use one attorney. You've got one attorney for a car, one attorney for home loan, one attorney for overdraft, so now you've got 5 attorneys suing you. And you have to defend each and every matter. Whereas under debt review, you just walk in. You can just phone the debt counselor now, set appointment, start with the debt review process, sign the Form 16, voila, you're under debt review, you are protected. You don't have to go and defend anything.
While you're still there, Elias, you have said something very, very powerful. High Court, not only one lawyer appears. Statutorily, it requires an advocate.
Yes.
Whereas there are those attorneys who are also allowed to debate at High Court. Yeah, but you need to understand that it's not only one. You need to have one who's going to argue. You need to have another one who's going to do the admin work. The chances are you may have 3 legal representatives. So I want to bring that to the consumer's attention.
In conclusion,
yeah,
the danger there is if the judge realizes that you have got money for the attorneys, but you don't have money for credit providers, you have got a problem.
That's it. And at 30,000, it's a minimum. It could be more.
Well, remember, you can have an advocate or an attorney that can start with 20,000 rand, but it's going to end up with 30,000 rand because it's not cheap.
Yeah.
Because look at how the credit providers, remember, the credit providers push the legal fees to you as the consumer when they sue you. How much are their bills? How much is the statement of the credit provider when they want to recoup the legal fees from you? They're charging you 40,000 rand.
So you'll pay the legal fees of the creditor and your legal fees of the representative. And as I said, it's a minimum. The legal fees are not kept, are not regulated as compared to fees for debt cancelling.
Well, of the attorneys, they've got their tariff. They've got their tariffs there, but in a court appearance, we know that that's what it costs. How do you know about it as a consumer? If you have ever received someone's court judgment, ask the bank to send you the breakdown of the legal fees. Then you'll see how much it costs. And then remember, your lawyer also charges the same amount. If the bank charges you 30 to 40, because remember, every time that your matter gets postponed, it's more legal fees.
So people need to understand. People need to understand the avoidance. The avoidance. If you want to have money, these are little things that people need to understand and know how to juggle around.
Yet, if you could have just applied for that review, you're going to avoid all this.
Mr. Shamatla, always nice talking to you, and you enlighten us all the time. And then I hope our viewers out there will be happy and then will be enlightened by this information. Thank you very much, sir. And I hope to meet with you again next week, Monday, same time, same place.
Thank you, Doctor. It's always an honor to be here.
Hello, everybody. My name is the Sobre Boys Wanafatsi from a TBR Solution. TBR Solution is a financial company that helps people to be financially savvy. I'm sure these days you are aware that prices are very up in terms of petrol, in terms of goods and services. Prices are very, very high. Now, these days, we are on a campaign to help those members of GPF or government employees, especially if you are 55 years old or above, and you are contemplating to resign or go on pension in 3 months' time. Give us a call or drop us a WhatsApp, then we'll call you back so that we help you to get your money expeditiously, as compared to sometimes people get their money after a long time. We will then transfer your money from GPF to Allen Gray, who we have a relationship with. And the good news is, once the money has been transferred, you will choose how much you want to earn. If you happen to pass on, your spouse will also get the same amount. Then if it happens that both of you passes on, you would have appointed or selected beneficiaries. It could either be your children or anyone else. And there's nothing like age limit that they must be 22 or below. Even if they're above 22, they'll be able to get the inheritance from you. So that's how flexible it is. And then I know that sometimes people, they worry about medical aid and all that. we also have with other partners who assist you to get a medical aid. So if you want to learn more and get more information pertaining to that, just drop us a WhatsApp. We'll therefore come back to you. I thank you.